Ew. Gotta get rid of this old Backstreet Boys t-shirt.
Tell me why.
Because it stinks, boys.
Tell me why.
I've washed it so many times, but the odor won't come out.
Tell me why.
No, you tell me why I can't get rid of this odor.
Have you tried Downy Rinse and Refresh? It doesn't just cover up odors, it helps remove them.
Wow, it worked, guys.
Yeah.
Downy Rinse and Refresh removes more odor in one wash than the leading value detergent in 3 washes. Find it wherever you buy laundry products.
Welcome to this podcast. This is episode 53. My name is Tim Mitchell, and I am in Toronto, Ontario, and I'm joined once again by Jaime Lopez Jr. in Seattle, Washington.
How's it going?
We also have Jonathan Kuline on the line in Mississauga, Ontario.
Hello there.
All righty then. So, did you say how's it going, Jaime?
I did.
You feeling a bit better this week, are you?
I am. It's still hanging on, this illness, whatever it is, but it's just more congestion at this point.
Yeah, I don't know. There's a weird cold. I mean, I had a cold a couple of months ago, and it just didn't seem to go away for a long time, right? So just some weirdness. All right, let's do the fact check. Fact check. So the TV show that I was talking about last week that I couldn't remember the name of, and I said it was sort of like, Civil War, kind of like America went into it. I should have realized it was called Revolution. Duh. And what was interesting about that though was there was it was 2 seasons, I think, and there actually was a pocket of energies around. There was some sort of mystical, midichlorian kind of collection that sometimes would power things. And because I remember one episode, the lady was able to power up her iPhone 4 and look at her kids' pictures again, right? So yeah, it was kind of a weird show, but it kind of went, typical, somebody's running the government kind of thing, and there's the underbelly of American democracy that kind of invades a lot of American science fiction. I hate to say it, but so I'm not surprised that it got canceled, but it had an origin. The idea was interesting from the beginning. There was sort of some mysteries and stuff like that, some missing pieces that need to be figured out, and it did have a chance to make sense, but yeah, I think season 2 they killed it pretty much, and nobody cared. Jaime, got another point here for the fact check?
Yeah, a couple of items that I noticed from listening to last week's show. I said at some point related to being at the Oscars. Have you heard that part about us talking about being on the list, the officially recognized list by somebody of Star Trek related podcasts? And I said goggles in reference to, hey, we can see, put on your goggles and we can see Brad Pitt down at the very bottom. Like, at least we're in the same room, big hall. And what I meant was binoculars.
Or opera glasses.
Opera glasses would have worked too, but probably not goggles.
Well, surprisingly, I knew what you meant. That's the strange thing. So
that's that inner knowledge of each other that only comes with time.
I suppose. Yeah. And what's your next fact check?
This one's so terrible. I surely must have meant to make the pun at some point about how Dahj is not very good at dodging.
Right.
We had an audio production crew. We'd probably have the drums rim shot at the moment.
Bump, yeah.
And the last one that sort of came to mind, rewatching some stuff, was realizing, why do the modern Star Trek writers always choose Seattle as the hometown of characters who are, quote unquote, not what they seem? So Dahj also is supposed to be from Seattle, as well as, I guess, spoilers at this point for the first season of Discovery if you haven't seen it. Ash Tyler, Voke Tyler, supposedly from the Seattle area.
But wait, Voke is not human.
Yeah, but the Ash Tyler, either original person or the persona that was layered on top was from Seattle, and I think we commented on the fact that he got called out on that one for not being actually from Seattle. He's from a nearby neighborhood or suburb called Issaquah.
Oh, okay. All right. Only you would know that.
Yeah. But I was like, wait a minute, why are all the fake people from Seattle? What's going on here?
I don't know. Microsoft, I don't know. All right. So my fact check here is the necklace we were talking about last week. The symbol is of a fractal neuronic cloning, which is, who knows what that is, but that's what they talked about in terms of why these people are twins. And off to you, Jonathan.
Yep, just 2 other little things. So we were talking about The Expanse, and you were asking if that where that ended up. I just wanted to confirm it is on Amazon Prime. That's where the 4th season ended up, and that premiered about 6 weeks ago. ago. So anybody's looking for The Expanse, Amazon Prime Video.
Yeah, I'll have to go catch up on that.
And the last bit was we were trying to figure out which seasons. We were talking about Jodie Whittaker coming back for a third season as the Doctor on Doctor Who, and we were trying to figure out how many seasons each of the other Doctors had done. So David Eccleston did the first season of the rebooted Doctor Who. David Tennant was Doctor Who for 3 seasons, then followed by Matt Smith for 3 and Peter Capaldi for 3. So 3 seems to be the sort of standard amount at this point, with the exception of obviously the first Doctor, who was not enjoying his doctoring experience.
They do also do the Christmas specials or the New Year's specials, I guess, as well. And they kind of that kind of muddies the water in terms of how long these guys are on.
Well, and Tennant came back for the Day of the Doctor, and so there's been like crossovers and stuff. So
I mean, there's a famous. I remember seeing this famous one from the mid '80s where Tom Baker and John Pertwee and 3 other Doctors came together for one big, mashup. And I can't remember they went to some island or something, or some planet together, and they kind of all went to solve the problem. And I think the arch enemy might have been like the Master or somebody or Daleks or something like that. But there was a big, giant, mega show, and all the Whovians were, all excited about that one. I remember watching that one for sure. So it's not uncommon for them to sort of mix up Doctors in the canon of Doctor Who, right? So,
and we'll have a little more Doctor Who to come later in this episode.
Sure, if we remember. Make a note to talk about it.
Yeah.
All right, let's get into the headlines, Jonathan.
Headlines. Okay, so not long after our last episode, the news came out of England that Disney Plus Obi-Wan Kenobi show has been put on hold. Apparently, there was some issues with the script. They felt like it was a little bit too similar to The Mandalorian, apparently, because the original concept was one I think we were all kind of expecting, which is Obi-Wan Kenobi in the desert looking out for little Luke, and that rings a little bit true for some of the storylines of Mandalorian. So they have temporarily halted production on that until they can get a new person writing scripts that are a little more fresh.
So let's take a sidebar for a minute and talk about The Mandalorians. I don't know that we really talked about that show too much here. Like, now that
Mr. Lopez may or may not have watched it yet.
I have not watched it, so talking about it in very general terms would be ideal.
Well, the memes that are out there, right?
Yeah, those are unavoidable.
Okay, so
those are unavoidable. So certain shots I definitely know about. I'm aware that it seems to be like a cowboy western in space, which definitely fits pretty well for the material.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And do you know about one of the main characters of the show that everybody's like up and like excited about?
Like from a merchandising opportunity standpoint?
Yes. That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
So, Jonathan, just stand over there for a minute. So everybody's calling this character Baby Yoda, but this is clearly not in the timeline. This is of Yoda's species, but not Yoda per se, right?
It is okay. So there's a few speculative things out there as to what this being might be.
Did Yoda lose a fingernail and this guy grew up out of it?
Well, so that's one of the thoughts, is because prior to Anakin coming along, they established in one of the previous movies that Yoda has the highest count of midichlorians. So perhaps someone along the way was trying to, encourage, another Yoda type being so that they could, turn it to the dark side or who knows what. Again, not to spoil anything for Jaime, but there is just an offhanded reference, and it's not a huge spoiler, but there's an offhanded reference at one point in one of the last couple of episodes of Mandalorian season 1. One of them says, one of the characters says, he doesn't appear to be a clone. Like basically flat out puts it out there that he doesn't appear to be a clone. So because that was a lot of people's speculation, was it's either one of Yoda's species, it is a clone of Yoda, or it is perhaps a child, or distant whatever. But they've dismissed clone now because they did actually explicitly say that on the show. So that leaves he's just a member of that same race, or perhaps he's a relative of kind.
Right. Well, because everybody's related in Star Wars, right?
Well, yeah. Do you want to release the Kraken? Is that what you're trying to do?
No. I mean, that seems to be the convenient plot point that they wrap it up with a bow. Oh, let's make them related to
what's the line again, Jaime, from Spaceballs?
Your brothers, your mother's brothers, sisters, fathers, roommates, or something. I'd have to find the exact quote, but it's something nonsensical like that.
It's pretty bang on.
I got to say, my favorite scene in the movie of Spaceballs is where they're watching Spaceballs on the thing, and he's like, "We're watching Spaceballs.
Now
we're
is
still
now.
making Spaceballs.
Now is now. Now is right now. Now is then. Oh, that just happened? That was now. Okay, so let's... hey, speaking of Rise of Skywalker, would you like another reason to hate Rise of Skywalker?
Sure, go ahead. Release the Kraken. I guess.
So, the news came out after the movie that they killed another character from Return of the Jedi off camera.
Oh, really?
They have confirmed, they being the author of the Rise of Skywalker Expanded Edition book, Ray Carson, confirmed that Nien Nunb, who is the co-pilot in Return of the Jedi with Lando Calrissian, flies the Millennium Falcon.
Really? Okay.
Apparently, Ray Carson has confirmed that character died in the lightning attack by Palpatine. That his ship was struck by lightning, fell, and didn't pull up and died, and he died. So, as ignominious as the death of Admiral Akbar was in Last Jedi, where they were like, "Hey, look, Akbar's back," and then they blew him out of the sky and he flew off into space, and that was it for him, without even get to utter his famous line. They killed this character who, again, was like another little like, "Oh, I know that guy" kind of moment, fan servicey kind of thing, but then they killed him off camera. So come on, movie.
Yeah, and there was that character that was in Force Awakens that they even made a figure for, and then he got cut out of. He's in the trailer, but I think he got cut out of the movie. Right?
Yeah. So that was a weird one. I don't know why. If you're going to go to the effort of bringing that character back, then at least if you're going to kill him, make it an impactful moment for people who would be like, "Damn, they just killed that guy." Strange choice. Maybe he'll be in the bonus cuts. You'll get to see Nien Nunb screaming to death as he burns under the electrical fingertips of the Emperor. Yeah. Speaking of untimely demises, Howard the Duck was scheduled to be a Hulu animated series that was going to be produced or written by Kevin Smith, one of our favorite directors, and it has been canned, shot down, as it were. They've also canceled a planned Tigra and Dazzler team-up series. Now, there's we've talked about it, I think, previously. The folks at Marvel TV is sort of changing over a little bit as it migrates more to Disney Plus and away from being on ABC and Hulu and Freeform and some of the other things. It seems like a lot of those shows are sort of wrapping things up, and I guess in the casualties of this maneuvering in the Marvel TV universe, we've lost two possible shows. A little disappointed about the Howard the Duck one. As you know, I'm a Howard the Duck fan. I do have my Howard the Duck movie fandom as I stand alone in the corner screaming loudly. And Kevin's involvement, again, I like him. I think he's got a funny sense of humor. I think it would have been interesting to see what he did with that character. So kind of a bummer.
Great. We are going to see Kevin Smith on Saturday.
We are two days away from going to go see Kevin live.
Yeah, a few sleeps away. Yep.
Speaking of characters that are now gone,
this is like really disappointing headlines so far.
I know. Sorry, I'll try and turn it around towards the end here. So the Hollywood Reporter had an interview with Linda Hamilton, who, of course, was famously back in her role, the role that made her most famous as Sarah Connor in Terminator Dark Fate this fall. She did an interview with the Hollywood Reporter and said that she would, quote, be quite happy to never return to Terminator again. As far as she's concerned, she's done. Now, not, I guess, terribly surprising. The movie was a disappointment, although I think, I don't know, Tim, you tell me what you think. I thought it was decent. Not the best.
Yeah, it blew decent. Up real good, yeah. There was some quiet moment. I had to take a break in the middle of the movie, but that was, it wasn't horrible.
It was certainly the best, I would say, since Terminator 2.
True.
But not even close to that caliber, unfortunately. But yeah, so apparently it was intended that she would be back in this role, and spoilers, she does make it in one piece through the film. So there was speculation that she would come back and she would, if they wanted to continue the franchise, she would be a part of that. She said no. She feels like she's done it. She tried it and she's done doing it. So.
Well, maybe Lena will come back.
Yeah, I'm down with that. I think she's great. She's a great.
Now she's done with Cersei, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. Another story that you guys might have some thoughts on. So apparently, Apple and Netflix are both eyeing methods to expand their back catalog of their films for their services as all of the streaming services get more and more compartmentalized. And apparently one of the ways that they are doing that is both are kicking the tires on buying the assets from MGM. Now, this would provide them with a pretty deep back catalog of movies. Obviously, MGM, a very long-running film production studio, including, of course, James Bond's movies and lots of other famous ones. So it could be a nice little boost for obviously Netflix is losing some of its ability to have Hollywood movies, as things like NBC's Peacock and HBO and Hulu and all these other services are starting to sort of migrate their own, and Disney Plus, of course, trying to migrate their own talent and their own assets together. Could be a nice boost for whichever one lands it. What do you guys think about the possibility of one of those guys ending up with that huge catalog?
I think to me it would make a lot of sense, because we actually talked a little bit about this topic vaguely on More Than Just Code, but the hypothesis here is Apple gave out a year of Apple TV Plus for free if you bought new devices, with the idea being, look, nobody's going to pay $4.99 a month for 3 shows, right? So give it to people for free.
Well, technically there are 6 shows, but that's beside the point.
I mean, okay, fair. But it feels like a relative handful compared to what Netflix already has that it's built up over the years, or what Disney Plus started with immediately because of the vast quantity of content that Disney has available. So it really doesn't weigh out too well for that. But if you give it for a year, then you have time to build up a catalog. I mean, what's a better way of having a catalog than just acquiring a pretty good one? I mean, that seems like a sensible thing to do.
Well, I mean, there was discussion at one point within the last couple of years that because Apple was sitting on so much liquid capital, that if they really had their heart set on it, that they might just buy Netflix outright, right?
Yeah, they totally could, yeah.
So, I mean, there is a good argument to be made that if they want to, really just stake their claim, they just do that.
Well, it's interesting. They just had their quarterly numbers, which is what we were talking about on the other show yesterday, or the other day yesterday, I guess. That services is maybe 10 or 15% of what Apple brought in last year. I was just going to wonder here, as we were talking about this, how much Apple TV Plus is costing Apple, how much in terms of making shows and all that kind of stuff. But it sounds to me like they're coming out, in the black on this. So I kind of wonder, and they totally have fat stacks of cash, as we like to say, to be able to afford to buy a Netflix or even MGM for that matter, right? What would MGM give them, in terms of what shows would come over from MGM? I mean, besides all the classic movies and stuff like that. But
I think it was the movie catalog that they're most interested in, because movies is kind of one of the areas where both of them don't really have a lot of immediate pull. Now, obviously, Netflix is developing a lot of original movies, but they're losing a lot of their back catalog because, again, they were licensing a lot of the Disney movies. They were licensing a lot of movies that are now going to end up, because Warner movies are going to end up on HBO because they're affiliated, of course. The other thing is that the MGM actually does produce television shows as well. So they produce Handmaid's Tale is theirs.
Right,
so there's a few different ones.
Arts and entertainment stuff, right?
Yeah, so there's some good stuff in there. And then again, it's a really deep catalog of back catalog movies too. That's really where you get the wealth from that.
Yeah, well, they're talking about the James Bond franchise, which would be a big one. And
and again, it's exclusives, right?
Yeah, and then A&E stuff, and also VH1 stuff apparently is owned by MGM.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, it seems like, they're talking about it potentially being $10 billion. It's not obviously the assets that Disney paid for Fox. You're not getting quite that caliber, but still a $10 billion deal. I do think there's a good case for both of them needing the shot in the arm that they would get from it, and both of them maybe being behind the 8 ball a little bit if they don't.
Yeah, my favorite comment in this article is that, and I'm going to paraphrase it, that representatives of Apple did not immediately return Gizmodo's request for comment. Which Jaime should understand, right? There's a sore spot with between Apple and Gizmodo.
Yeah.
All right, what's next?
All right, last one for me. So this one was a lot of fun end of last week. The U.S. Space Force, President Trump's U.S. Space Force, unveiled its logo, and it looks an awful lot like something that sci-fi fans would be familiar with. So let's paint a word picture here for the people who are transporting at home.
Oh my God!
It looks just maybe like a little bit like a like an arrowhead with like a swoosh around it, and a planet behind it. Some words over the top and some words under the bottom. I'm trying to nail down exactly what it looks like. You guys have any thoughts on what it might be similar to? Oh, that's right. It looks exactly like Starfleet Command logo.
I was going to say that George Takei commented that they're expecting some royalties from this.
Yeah. And I think the other note, I don't know which one of you attached the note from John Noonan too. But yeah, I mean, Air Force Space Command and United States Space Force, and it is it immediately caught the eye of a lot of people online who were like, "Wow, that's just so blatant a ripoff."
Well, isn't the United States? I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. We've talked about this on the show before on More Than Just Code, but isn't the United States a federation of states?
Yeah, I think it'd be considered that. So we refer to our federal government, right? We don't have a central command sort of
exactly.
concept.
Yeah, and it could be in San Francisco instead of Washington D.C., right?
Yeah, on the West Coast, the best coast.
Keep your eyes peeled for the announcement of the new first vessel that they christened for this beloved Space Force, the Schmenterprise.
What was the one that Archer flew, though?
That was the Enterprise, wasn't it?
Enterprise. No, it wasn't. What was Captain Pike's ship then? There was a different name.
I don't know.
I remember I read a book once about Kirk being an ensign on Archer's ship, and it was called something else. I don't know if it was called the Enterprise per se.
Stargazer, Farragut, I can't remember.
Yeah, Farragut. Maybe that rings a bell.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, strange. But it's funny, like in the book, the way they described Archer didn't look anything like the guy who played him on the TV show, like in my mind, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, the guy from what was that sci-fi show that he was
Quantum
on?
Leap? Scott Bakula. Scott Bakula from
Scott
Quantum
Bakula,
Leap.
yeah. You're encouraged. So is that the comment from that got put in there?
Yeah, because there was that person on Twitter who said, hey, actually, I had a similar symbol in the forces back in 2005, and people in the comments are saying that the U.S. Army Air Forces, which was in the 40s, prior to the separation of the Air Force as its own division versus the Army. Apparently, they used something vaguely similar with a delta. I think everything seems roughly true here. That it may have predated the Starfleet Command logo, but I think nobody was thinking about that heritage. If I had to guess, I think everybody was like, "Hey, this is a really cool thing." Yeah, it's cool because it looks very much like something that is top of mind in mainstream sort of consciousness.
All right, last one. Well, this is Jaime.
Yeah. So this is a weird and kind of sad story here for those of you who have been asked to choose your pain and you chose Linux as your pain. Apparently, CBS All Access on the Linux operating system will happily serve you the ads, but will not actually give you the content that you actually desire. And they dig into this in the article, and it looks like it's related to the Widevine cross-platform DRM system that is not working appropriately. Apparently, it's only through CBS All Access's player itself where this is an issue, and people are talking about workarounds where if you go through Amazon and purchase CBS All Access as an additional channel through that system, you play the content through Amazon's video system, and it plays just fine on Linux. So pro tip out there for anybody who might have had this problem.
Yeah, interesting. We have a similar thing through the Apple TV. You can have your Crave app, and you can watch Crave here in Canada. That's how I'm kind of watching the show. But yeah, I had trouble getting it today because when I went to go and watch it, all of a sudden my Crave lost its mind and lost a connection to my account. I had to log back in, and it was kind of painful. But anyway, odd. As an iOS developer, I'm really frustrated when an app loses my login credentials. Like from just because of an upgrade or something. Right? This just sounds so stupid to me. Anyway, all right. So on to the main part of the show, which is talking about Star Trek Picard, season 1, episode 2, Maps and Legends. And I think we agreed before the show that it would be my turn to do the recap. So I will get to my notes over here. So yeah, we've been calling the character Asha, but it's actually her name name is Soji Asha. The show begins 14 years ago on Utopia Planitia, which I guess intends to replay the first contact day massacre. Starts off with the guy calling these synthetics out of the closet that they live in as plastic people. So obviously there's a bit of a put down there. The humanoids are putting down these synthetics, and like there's one character in the room is a character named F8, and he is a sentient, and they're teasing him about his lack of humor. Like they ask him what's brown and sticky, and he doesn't know the answer to that. But in the process of these people have to work on first contact day because somebody has to stay and man the post, as it were. And all of a sudden, F8 goes Manchurian Candidate on them and starts to compromise the computer systems. I assume he's the one that turns off the defense shields, which allows is it the Romulans that attack Utopia Planitia? I didn't really say that in this episode much. So and then he thanks to autocorrect, it says distorts self, but I actually wrote disrupts self because after he's done shooting everybody in the room, he also shoots himself, which I don't get the point of that. Anywho, then we flash forward to the current timeline where Picard and Laris and Zaban, who are his two Romulan companions, are looking for evidence of the twins on Earth. And Laris starts telling Picard about the Tal Shiar, which is a Romulan secret police, I guess similar to the secret polices you hear about in Eastern European countries, who do nefarious things. And she said, but even worse than that is this Zvat Vash, which is as Zaban describes, something you tell kids about, like sort of a boogeyman, or it's another word for the dead in Romulan culture. And one point that Laris makes is that pretty much everything in Romulan culture can be preceded with the word secret. So apparently this Zvat Vash is sort of the Voldemort of Romulan culture. They really don't discuss it outside of their own peoples, which comes into play a little bit later. So in a sort of a flashback kind of scene, Laris and Picard actually go to Dahj's apartment to see where she says her boyfriend was killed, and of course there's no evidence whatsoever. It's like it's been scrubbed clean, metaphorically and actually. So Laris takes out a scanner and starts to scan, and Picard reminds her that Romulan forensic reconstruction is illegal in the Federation. She says, "Oh, really? I didn't know that." And then she starts to scan the room, and he's reminding her that it's unreliable. And she says, "Good, that's what we want you to think, right?" They scan the room and they find that absolutely, like, it's almost like the room has been scrubbed clean. And then like in sort of how those of us in the IT world would know, if you want to hide something on a drive, you overwrite it with other data, and that's what they had done to try and mask this stuff. And so they flash back to the room where the original conversation's happening, and Lars tells Picard that the Zvat Vash have a deep, unassuageable loathing of synthetics. They just, there's no concept of any sort of artificial life forms or entities, no AI. Even their computers are numeric. They don't. There's nothing, artificial in any sense in Ramen culture. That's sort of something that they seem to be against. But these Zvat Vash peoples are like extremely against any kind of artificial life, right? So, and she doesn't know why they hate artificial life, but they do. So coming back to the apartment, they flash back to that scene there, and they're checking out. They go to her desk, and they find some sort of communication device which logs her I guess her phone calls, for lack of a better word.
Isn't it her Newton? Didn't they find her Newton?
Yeah, it was her. I think it was her Palm Pilot, actually.
Right, that's it.
Yeah. So they start scrubbing through the records of that, and it's got the whole Minority Report. Like everything in this future seems to be these invisible screens that just sort of project themselves into real space holographically, and you interact with them. Anywho, Laris is going through the records, and she sort of says, "Yeah, they've even gone through and they've scrubbed all these things clean. So it's really, there's no index, there's no way to sort of sort through them. I guess the Sherlock has been turned off on the data, so they can't search through it." But she says that she inquires about the fact that they're twins, and she says, "Well, maybe the computer her house computer kind of mistook her sister for her, and she makes a point that computers, use heuristics to sort of keep track of things, and it would have recorded that it made the mistake of thinking that the sister incoming call was her. So they actually do find a couple of messages coming from the sister, and turns out that he sort of said, well, where is she? Where in the world is she? And where in the world is Carmen Sandiego? And of course, Lars tells Picard that the messages are coming through subspace channels, which means she's not on the Earth at all. So she's calling from off-world somewhere. And then the storyline flips over to the Borg cube, which we left last week, where the Romulans seem to be reconstructing, or I forget where there's a term for it. It'll come back to me when I get to my note here. But and so Narek and Soji are discussing after they've had tryst, of course. They're discussing how the cube is has been severed from the collective, and sort of how there's a concern obviously that the Borg will just come back to life and connect up, and she tells him that it's kind of, they've been severed from the collective, so there's no chance of that. And so they're going through, and there are some Borg on the ship, but they've been isolated, so it's like a graveyard to the Borg. So they're kind of cool to do this, and so in their they're getting to know each other kind of phase. She starts to ask him questions about himself and who he is, and he basically tells her the sum of it is a TLDR. He says, I'm a private person, and then he says to her, can you keep a secret? She says, yes, of course I can. He says, so can I. So he doesn't tell her who he is, and of course, dun dun dun, that's sort of laying a trap for us watching the show to realize, okay, maybe there's more. There's something's afoot here, which I'm sure probably rang all kinds of bells in Jonathan's head there as he was watching the show. Anyway, he wants to watch her work, and she sort of says, well, you'll need permission to do that. And he kind of says to her, I don't. But actually, before we get to that part, we flash back to Picard, who's trying to get a certificate of interstellar service, or to be claimed to be fit to travel in space. And an old friend of his, Dr. Benoyan, comes to visit after getting his medical records or whatever together, and comes and personally tells him that you're not actually fit to travel. You've got this issue with your brain, and which throws you into flights of rage, and you could have trouble with memory and things like that. And he makes a point to the fact that, blowing up on a national broadcast of an interview, that's not the first time we hear this in the show, but he shows that as an example of what could be happening to Picard's degrading health. Picard then goes to Starfleet and checks in at the front door, and nobody recognizes him, kind of thing, or the young kid at the millennial or the Gen Z at the front door doesn't recognize him, and so he has an appointment with this Admiral Kirsten Clancy, and he says, he starts to tell about how Bruce Maddox is possibly using neurons from Data to make some more synthetics, and the Romulans are involved, and we have an obligation to go and figure out what's going on, and give me a warp. I want to go on one mission with a warp capable ship, and I'll even be demoted to captain if you like. And she just looks at him and says, what sheer bleep hubris. Interesting that they swear on this show, but
twice in the same episode,
a couple of times, yeah. And the Romulans were our enemies, and you tried to help them, and everybody on the Federation said no, and she just sort of called it this whole idea of his story. And again, it comes back to what I was saying last week about maybe this is a setup for Picard. She calls it the pitiful delusions of an old man, right? So that kind of ends that scene there, and he has to sort of go back and lick his wounds. But meanwhile, we go back to the Borg cube, and Sijo has met a newbie and helps her out with getting ready. And they got these sort of badges that they have to put on, just gray, and the instructions are explained to them that it's gray. As long as it remains gray, you're cool. But if it starts blinking green, you better run out of there, get out of there as fast as you can. By the way, I don't know if you guys noticed, there was a sign that said 5,843 days since the last accident.
No, it says since the last assimilation.
Last assimilation. Okay, well, and so if you do the math on that in Earth years, that's 15 years, which is kind of around the same time. It was 14 years ago that the Planitia thing happened. So I'm trying to remember, was there a Borg ship that was taken down in one of the movies, or maybe First Contact or something?
It seems like it's in Romulan control, so it's and they make a point of saying that Soji's nowhere near Earth, so logically no.
Yeah, I was kind of wondering too, because I even went and looked at the amount of solar days in Mars. It's in the 600s. It's nowhere near like 365 like we are here. So I was kind of wondering why that particular number. I tried to make an association, and being a humanoid, I would naturally use 365 as my divisor, right? Reclaiming the Borg is what they're doing. This is the word I was looking for earlier in my description. And she sort of says to him, he says, I'd like to come and watch you work, and I'd like to come and watch the process. And she says, you can't. You'd need approval of the director of the Borg Reclamation Project. Anyway, however you pronounce that word. So he says to her under his breath, no, I actually don't need the permission. So I don't know, does that mean he is the director of a Borg Reclamation Project, or he's cousins with the, whatever. Anyway. Actually, maybe it's his sister. We'll come back to that later. Alison Pill, forgotten her name, Dr. blah, blah, blah. What's her name?
Dr. Girardi.
Girardi, thank you. Dr. Girardi comes to visit Picard and give him some more information. And surprise, she likes Earl Grey tea. She gives him some information about Dahj Asha, that she checked out her metadata. Basically, she was enrolled in Daystrom Academy. She had great marks, whatever, in wherever she went. But it seems to be that her identity was invented 3 years ago. So maybe she's only 3 years old. But there's no record that she attended some R3 SA, whatever that is, and that. And interestingly, they don't really talk about it, but she kind of opens her her PDA there, and she airdrops him something or other. She just sort of says, here you go, and it's sort of passing method. I don't know if you guys even caught that. But yeah, so she's obviously giving him some information. And then we come back to the main ship again, the Borg ship, and the doctor receives a surgery of removing the Borg implants from I think a deceased person on the ship, and the Romulan doctor calls them the Nameless, and Asha kind of asks her why you do that, and after they've removed all of the implants from the guy, she walks over to him, and I think in Romulan she says, "You are free, my friend," in that part there. So, and then we come back to Picard, back on his Shiz Picard. What do we call it? Chateau Picard.
Chateau Picard.
Sorry.
Yes, Chateau Picard.
Chateau Picard. Yes, not Shiz Picard, which is probably just as valid naming nomenclature. Anyway, he puts on a comm badge, a Starfleet comm badge, and calls Raffi, leaves a voicemail and talks to Raffi, asks whoever Raffi is not to hang up, and I need a ship, kind of thing, right? So then we find out this new character named Commodore O, who is a Romulan, high-ranking Romulan in the Federation, who gets a call from Clancy, who Picard went to visit earlier, and Clancy sort of tells her some of the details of what happened, but we find out a little bit later in the next conversation that Commodore O knows more about what happened in the conversation than what Clancy even tells her. She calls a character named Lieutenant Rizzo to come and see her, so we have to wait for a bit to see who that is. Flashback to the chateau, and Lars, throws down a tray of tea and claims that Picard has dementia, and because he's come up with this stupid idea to go into space, and she refuses to have any part of it, and she suggests that maybe Zahan goes with him, I should say, to take care of him, and take him with you, she says, and she storms off and slams the door. Then we come back to Rizzo visiting O, and clearly there's a dynamic between the two of them. Not a lot is said, but you totally can infer what's going on, because Commodore O is telling Rizzo that she didn't cover up her tracks well enough, because there are some visual clues that there was a disruptor fire going on. So you kind of botched up that job. She said that Commodore O says that Picard had mentioned the Vash, even though Clancy didn't mention that part, and O is like, well, how do you know that? And she goes, don't underestimate me. And at one point, Rizzo says, oh, that was unexpected, and Commodore O says that's a dirty word in our line of work. So in other words, you have to expect everything. And she claims that she doesn't mention that Narek is Rizzo's brother, but we find this out just in a few more minutes. and she claims that he's sloppy and suggests that Rizzo stay on mission, and if she has to deal with Picard, Commodore O will take care of him. And she says, you destroyed the thing before we could interrogate it. So obviously, these two characters here are on the side of people who don't like artificial life forms, and she claims that there better be no more surprises, and you better go off and manage this in person. So obviously, Rizzo is going to be sent off to the Borg ship to deal with the thing, you better not fail, that kind of thing. There's a short little scene there where Picard visits Raffi, and of course she's hostile, doesn't want to see him, except of course he's brought a nice bottle of the 86 wine that he's made, and so she's obviously going to help him out. And then we find out last scene of the episode, Rizzo FaceTimes, what do we call it? Force times Narek, sorry.
Yeah, force time.
Yeah, force times. So he force times Narek, and like Sarek did with Michael Burnham and Kylo Ren and Rey did in the Star Wars franchise. Basically she questions. She says that Commodore O is distressed. She's not very happy with what's going on, and you better not screw up. And then we find out through the two of them that they're brother and sister, and that Rizzo's had her ears cropped so she looks more human than Romulan, although she has got big ears, I gotta say. And they're trying to figure out where the nest is, where these this nest of nasty synthetics is coming from, and that's how the episode ends.
Yep.
How'd I do?
That was pretty bang on.
Yeah, pretty spot on there.
Yeah. A couple of things that I caught that I'd like to throw in there.
Sure.
So they call the character in the opening scene the synthetic who goes Manchurian Candidate.
Yeah.
He's F8, which
F8,
of course Fate.
Oh.
Gotcha. Little wordplay there.
Yeah.
When we do see him, he comes into the room in the first part, and he's acting very robotic, not very data-like, very much more artificial seeming, and he is interacting with the other crew members in a robotic way, but not out of, I guess, what they're used to. And then he comes back into the room, and you see his eyes sort of change, like he's just uploaded a program or something.
Yeah, there's a Manchurian Candidate part.
Yeah. So they sort of give you that visual cue that like something has just triggered in his mind, and then, as you say, he kills himself at the or disintegrates himself at the end of that scene, which of course immediately makes you think like, well, that's destroying the evidence, right? Whoever or whatever did that to him, that turned him from somebody who was a awkward but clearly functional crew member to a killing machine who rather spectacularly kills that crew. Clearly they want nothing left over, so disintegration obviously gets rid of all the evidence. It's not just as simple as deactivating yourself or whatever else, right? So I'll be interested to see how that sort of there was a sense in my mind immediately went to the idea of that sort of computer virus / Borg assimilation kind of vibe when he sort of triggers like that. He kind of almost had that same thing that we have seen on previous Star Trek shows and movies, where somebody who is normal becomes infected by the Borg and just turns into a killing machine, right?
Right.
So interesting to see how that plays out.
Any twists and turns in this that you think? I mean, obviously, no surprise that Narek turns out to be a baddie, right? Yeah,
I mean, he seemed like a sketchy character. Even in the first episode, he was a little sketchy. This one, he comes off as quite sketchy. I mean, the conflict, I thought the scene that was really interesting was the one between Clancy and Picard, the first one, where he sort of comes in and says, I need a ship and a crew, and pitiable delusions of a once great man. That's pretty harsh, and request denied, and she really sort of shuts the door on him. And then of course that spills over into the conversation with Commodore O, where they sort of fill in the blanks a little bit and did down into the conspiracy with O. That the line that Rizzo uses, she says, you need me to take care of Picard, like that's some pretty dark stuff. I wasn't entirely clear, like, was the impression supposed to be that Commodore O and Rizzo are clearly Romulan, or
yes, they are.
Or was there, because when Narek makes the comment about Rizzo's ears.
Right, you've got them cropped, yeah.
I got the impression what he was saying was that you were trying to make yourself look more like a Vulcan and less like a Romulan.
Well, she looked more human because she had rounded over ears, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I don't know if that was like a cosmetic thing or if
her eyebrows were adjusted so they curved down instead of up, right?
Yeah. So I don't know if that was just supposed to be like you've groomed yourself like that, or you're actually trying to be like pretend you're something you aren't. I wasn't entirely clear.
Well, we've seen this before. I mean, with Volk and Ash, right? And I think in the original series there was a lot of making Kirk look like a Romulan and vice versa, right? And I think maybe I'm getting confused with or the Orville, but something similar like that, right?
Yeah.
Well, you would have been right either way, because I think the other one you're going to say is TNG has Counselor Troy gets made to look like a Romulan.
Right. Yeah.
And actually, that ends up happening to Picard and Data in Reunification when they go to Romulus to go find Spock.
And Riker, too.
I totally forgot about that, but yes.
Riker had the big forehead. You totally look wrong.
Yeah.
There's also the character that in Nemesis, which we talked about last week, but he was supposed to be human. He was supposed to be a clone of Picard, right?
Right, yeah.
Right.
Shinzon, yeah. So that's an interesting thing to bring up, because there's a couple different things that people have been asking about on the interwebs related to how this stuff ties into other Star Trek media. So funny people were like, yo, so they helped the Romulans escape. What about those Remans, though? They just let them die. Why don't they get a shout out, What's up with that? And the other one was Narek, the British sexy Romulan dude who ends up with Dr. Sojiasha. He mentions in the previous episode, he'd mentioned his brother, which people were wondering, I wonder if timeline-wise that ends up working out that his brother was Nero, which would tie it even more into the Kelvinverse and split in the timeline. I don't know. I don't know if that will come up, but it is an interesting hypothesis.
Nero being the guy who went after Spock in the first new Star Trek?
Right, because Narek mentions that he lost his brother, which would kind of make sense, right? Like your brother just disappeared from his standpoint.
I keep telling you guys this, right? Everybody's related. I keep telling you this, right?
No, that's the other star thing.
Oh, the other star thing, yeah.
So the part that I found interesting was the whole the idea that Dahj is also her backstory was obviously made up, and that she was the sort of fictionalized version of a person. But interesting that she had this whole sort of 3-year life away, but then theoretically she was going back to Daystrom, right? Like if she hadn't been attacked by the Romulans, she was going back to Daystrom, which theoretically would put her under the sort of quote unquote protection of Agnes Jurati, right?
Oh, okay. But Agnes Jurati wasn't at Daystrom, was she? She was in Starfleet.
No.
Oh, okay.
Dr. Jurati is, that's Alison Pill's character. She's the one who's at Daystrom.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
So it would have been like maybe like Maddox. I don't know if Maddox put it in her that she was supposed to like go out there and experience the world and then head back to where she came from or something.
Well, replicants can only live for 4 years, as you know, right? So,
yeah.
So she has to go back, right?
Yeah. I wonder what the sort of the process behind that. If she was sort of back to the mothership, or if she was sort of out, gaining sort of experience undercover and then was supposed to, head back where she came from, or
Other thing that I thought was interesting was so we've known that Riker and Troy are going to come back at some point during this season, possibly in the next episode or two, I would guess, just based on the timeline. But we now know canonically that Geordi LaForge and Worf are still alive.
Mm-hmm.
And
they mentioned them in the show,
And people had kind of wondered a lot about LaForge, because it was like, I think the comic that came out in concert with this series as a lead-in had said that LaForge was leading the Utopia Planitia Fleet Yards work. And people were like, so did he die off screen? What happened to him? And now we know that canonically he must be alive.
Yeah. It's interesting that Picard practically says we couldn't afford their contract in this show too, right?
Well, and I also kind of, headcanon, when they have that scene with the medical doctor and Picard's trying to get his medical marijuana license prescription. They bring up I don't think they ever state it directly, but they bring up the parietal lobe problem and sort of hint at the fact that he might end up with something like Irumodic syndrome, which is what was causing him to go senile in All Good Things, or at least that's what.
Oh, really?
Crusher in that future timeline was saying that, oh, it's his Irumodic syndrome. That's what's causing him to become like senile or dementia.
Well, and he says that to the doctor at one point. He says, I've been made aware that this might be a thing. I think that was a reference to his knowledge of what had happened to him in that alternate future.
Well, it also comes back to the idea that I had last week about this whole thing being some sort of ruse. You go after Picard because, like people do this all the time with senior citizens. They take advantage of them, like sell them cable services that they don't need and sell them vacuum cleaners that they can't afford. But it's kind of like it would be an easy mark for someone to sort of plant this on him and then have him run around as maybe a ruse or a subterfuge for some reason. Although we know that he's the star of the show and, we're all supposed to be on his side and stuff like that. But wouldn't it be amazing if they could run a 5-year arc that actually this is all happening in Picard's head or something like that,
That would be...
Because nobody's seen these people. Only Picard's seen them, right? Other than Asher, Soji and Narek. But Picard didn't... Picard saw Dahj, but I guess...
No, she was at that place, yeah. I mean, if this... I don't know. It seems like that would be a really long way to go to tell that kind of story.
Yeah. But by the same token, though, the storytellers are safe in doing that because the people at Starfleet clearly don't believe Picard, right? He's the crazy old guy now, right?
Yeah, I think it was just their way
and he's turned on them by, saying bad things about them in the press, right?
Yeah, it was just a very convenient way to sort of write around the fact that, he doesn't have to call up the very expensive cast members and do that sort of Starfleet way. Also, again, I think they sort of make a point in the first episode that, he feels like the Federation and Starfleet have lost their way. And, that conversation he has with Clancy, I think really nails that home where he says, the Federation doesn't get to decide who, whether a race lives or dies. And she says, damn right we do.
Yeah.
That speaks to that there is a real, sort of issue with the morality and the decision-making at the highest levels of that organization, which so I think it's in one way she's like, well, we're not giving you a ship. I think it also kind of absolves him of having to sort of get back into bed with them, right?
Right.
Yeah, I also kind of felt like it ended up giving us some more flavor about the reasonableness of Starfleet's and the Federation's take on it. So this is definitely something that people have been sort of debating online. And one of the notes I have here is that the Admiral says that 14 species wanted to leave the Federation unless Romulans were cut loose, which I'll give a partial Captain Benjamin Sisko quote here of, do you know what the trouble is? The trouble is Earth. On Earth, there is no poverty, no crime, no war. You look out the window of Starfleet headquarters and you see paradise. It's easy to be a saint in paradise. And his whole point there, I think, was when stuff hits the fan, people act completely differently. And at this point, they had dealt with the Dominion War, maybe Borg incursions, and now they're given an opportunity to help their longtime enemy, and they seem to have struggled philosophically with it, very similar to Star Trek VI, The Undiscovered Country, where the Federation helping the Klingons after Praxis blows up. And they got hit with the double whammy of this synthetic uprising that killed a whole bunch of people and ended up hurting their ability to even have a fleet ready to roll. So between that sort of pressures and the pressures of, this Federation might start coming apart at the seams, I'm not saying it was the right answer, and clearly Picard is more of an optimist about maintaining composure even in those challenges, but I could see where it'd be reasonable that a lot of people would say, yeah, maybe they can just deal with it themselves.
Yeah. Where did the line about the fact that, did we lose a lot of Starfleet ships in some episode or some movie that I'm not thinking about? Because, why were they building all these ships in Utopia Planitia?
I think the idea was they were building those ships to help with the evacuation.
Oh, of the Romulans.
Yeah, because I think the idea is that because the synth attacked, that left them really short-handed, and then because they were short-handed, they didn't want to use the rest of their ships on a mission that they thought was too risky and that was politically bad for them, because if it all went wrong, then they'd be wide open.
Right, gotcha.
So it was a real domino, that the fact that the synths turned and attacked and destroyed all the ships started the dominoes falling towards the Romulans being left high and dry, and Picard obviously ends up quitting Starfleet over it.
Right. Righto. All right.
Overall thoughts? This seemed like more of a glue episode. It wasn't really, we're sort of piecing together puzzle pieces. It wasn't really like a lot of oh my god moments, just a lot of little just short, quick scenes.
Laying the groundwork out, letting us know who the players are, kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
Introducing this new new. I mean, the whole idea, as you said before, where I forget what you call it, where explanation episode, right?
Yeah, like plot exposition. It's got to go somewhere.
Sorry,
plot exposition's got to go somewhere.
Yeah. So it's the whole laying out the pieces of who the bad players are. The bad Romulans and the good Romulans, or the not so bad Romulans, and
yeah.
Like it's interesting because we haven't really talked about how these two companions, let's call it, that are hanging out with Dr. Picard. They're there to help him with the vineyard and all that kind of stuff, but they're also refugees from Romulan, right? So, and what's their role in his life? And obviously, Zara has trouble. Laris has trouble with his decision to go off and travel around the world, and now he should be enjoying his elder years, right?
Yeah. Was it my imagination, or was her accent kind of all over the place tonight?
I kind of get with these two actors, I kind of get sort of an English twang to it.
She's Irish.
She's got
Irish, right?
It says cheeky little feckers is what people have.
No,
quoted.
she said "fu."
She's. I mean, I don't know if it's just the actress or the affectation, but she was definitely using an Irish lilt in there. And
maybe.
But it sort of came and went a few times. She was sort of at times doing an American accent, and at times it felt like the Irish coming through. So it was a little distracting at times.
Yeah, it could be. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I kind of got the impression that these two would, since they've spent so much time developing them, that they would actually come with in the mission that's coming. We know is coming, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, we don't know for sure that we won't get them eventually, although it does sound like Laris doesn't seem like she's going anywhere, but she says you can take Zahan, right?
Yeah.
So maybe Zahan will come with them.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting. My take was, since Zahan says, well, I can't just leave her alone, and Picard's like, the grapes kind of need you more than I do. I put it together in my head, looking for it. I was like, oh, that's probably how he ends up with that, Eleanor, the space elf Romulan dude. They probably say, hey, let's call up this dude that we know to go with you if we can't go with you. And considering that they're former Tal Shiar, I'm guessing that they will play a part in a distributed way where Picard and his crew are out in space doing stuff, and then these folks
these two are Tal Shiar? That was the secret police you talked about. Is that what you got out of this?
I could have sworn I'd have to go back and see if they actually mentioned it in episode. I thought they had made mention to the fact that they were former Tal Shiar.
Yeah, I didn't really get that they were necessarily. I think they were aware, so they may have been connected, but I didn't get the impression they were.
Oh, then I'm pulling it from the comic resource that people have talked about.
Yeah, I think she was talking about the fact that the Tal Shiar is out there, and the Federation knows them as secret police, but there's really a super secret police.
Yeah.
This boogeyman kind of dead people.
The secret police of the secret police
group. Yeah. So I mean, interesting, good show, episode, nice, lots of weird sort of bouncing around. Like an exposition episode, like you said. Not so much of. I mean, did it end on a cliffhanger? I don't really know. We just sort of ended on the two Romulan brother and sister talking, but it kind of just ended, right? Yeah,
I will say it felt like last year the one thing Discovery really did well in the second season was to sort of leave you on a lot of cliffhangers and a lot of I can't wait to see what happens next. This feels like it's sort of pacing a little differently.
Yeah.
It's more contemplative, which is why I found it a little bit irritating to see folks online dismiss Picard as being just pew pew pew.
Yeah, it's much more measured.
Pew, and it's taking a while to get into space. I'm like, it can't be both of these.
Yeah. No, I think we talked about that last week for the first episode. It felt very measured and paced, and there certainly was some exciting moments, but it really did feel much more, and even this one even more so, very much like they are sort of slow burning it.
Yeah, I mean, Kirk would have gone and stolen a ship by now, and he would have gotten the whole gang together, and they'd be escaping the shipyard right about now, right?
Yeah.
But it's just a little bit more. I mean, who didn't know walking into the Federation that they were going to throw him out on his ear, right? With his crazy old man plan, right?
Mm-hmm. And even the to a lesser degree, the receptionist, the young receptionist at the front, had no idea who the Tragically Hip are. He's like, should I know you? Can I have your name so I can check you in?
Yeah. As a reference to our show yesterday, we were talking about some millennials who didn't even know who Rush or the Tragically Hip were, working in California, and they're from Toronto. Ouch. Yes.
Those youngins not respecting the past.
Yeah. Okay, boomers. Let's move on to Doctor Who. On a lighter note.
Yeah.
So we haven't talked much about Doctor Who this season of our show. Well, let's do that now. So Jonathan, what did you call it? The Who position?
The what?
The Who's who's you sort of like you were talking about the fugitive Judoon.
Oh yes. Well, the Nuvian, the new Doctor Who, the Who.
Yeah, the Doctor Who.
Well, we will definitely have to say spoilers for this one because I think if we're going to get into it, we're going to get into it. But if you haven't seen Doctor Who season or series 12, episode 5, Fugitive of the Judoon, go watch that. Put this on pause. Go watch that, and then immediately come back and listen to this because it's going to be fun. This was the first episode this season that felt like. Obviously, the first 2 episodes they obviously brought back the Master, so there was some sort of canonical stuff that mattered in those episodes.
Yep.
And then we got a couple episodes that were a little more sort of, just a random adventure kind of stuff. And this one felt like it was going to be that too. It just felt like it was going to be sort of a regular, adventure in time and space. Yep. And then quickly it started to sort of get a little deeper, and you sort of got a sense of gravitas to it. And midway through the episode, we got a cameo, I guess a short scene with a very familiar face for longtime Doctor Who fans. In John Barrowman came back as Captain Jack Harkness,
Yep.
Who of course was on the show as a companion for a few years. And
there was a whole other show of his crew there. I don't know if you ever knew about that. I forgot the name
Torchwood.
of it. But
Torchwood,
yes.
Yeah, Torchwood. Yeah. It was really I was floored when I saw him. I was just like, what's Captain Jack doing back? Like, what? That's amazing. And I thought, like, well, that is like a big moment for the season, is that Captain Jack is back and he has these ominous things to say about robot men, and sort of lays out, sort of plants this seed for where the season might be going. And you're like, wow, that's a big twist. We wouldn't have seen that coming. And of course, as the episode continues to play out, the mystery of it is that the Judoon have shown up on Earth and basically closed off the city of Gloucester and are looking for an alien refugee or an alien fugitive. Right. And they're going around, they're trying to find it. We're throwing a few sort of red herrings as to, who it might be, what it might be, and what it is they're looking for. And in the end, the Doctor helps this, what she thinks is a human woman, to sort of escape. And then the big reveal comes that when, they go to this lighthouse that the woman's from, or apparently grew up at, the Doctor goes into the yard because she picks up an alien signal and breaks out a shovel and starts digging, and damned if she doesn't dig up a TARDIS. Right. At which point we get this, grand reveal that this human woman is not just Gallifreyan. She's not just Gallifreyan, but she's an incarnation of the Doctor, either past or future. Right.
And since neither one of them know each other, that's a real sort of twist in the story, because they would normally know, one of them would remember being the other person.
Yeah. And
that's sort of the canon.
The conclusion that our current Doctor comes to is that she must be from the past because she doesn't recognize the sonic screwdriver. Right. But then she can't understand why she doesn't have a memory of herself ever being this person.
Yeah. Now, Jaime, you may not know this or not, but every Doctor does up the insides of the TARDIS in their own signature style, right? So the style that we have now in Jodie Whittaker's TARDIS is one thing. Capaldi had a different one. The style of this TARDIS that this new Doctor, or this other timeline Doctor, Kelvin Doctor came from, is the original set from the very first Doctor Who series. Because there's at one point there when Matt Smith and David Tennant end up on that same TARDIS, and they go, "Oh, I love the circles. I miss the circles," kind of thing, right? But yeah, so for the Whovians out there, they had a field day with the fact that this was very, very retro, is like the original TARDIS sort of inside, right? So
yeah, which again leans into the supposition that the second iteration of the Doctor that we've now met is from the past. But how she came to be on Earth, how she came to lose her memories of who she was, and why her memories of herself are blocked out, make for a really interesting twist midway through this season, and I think it definitely makes you want to come back and figure out what's going on.
Well, also, and the leader of the Judoon army is also Gallifreyan.
Yes, yeah.
Which is another twist in this. Again, going back to the sort of lore of Doctor Who, is that for the longest time, it was pretty much the Doctor and the Master were the last two sort of Gallifreyans around. Although they've brought them back in this new series, and they've gone back to because they're time travelers. They can obviously go back to Gallifrey before it was destroyed. But in the Day of the Doctor, there's a big judgment by the Gallifreyans of the various Doctors and that kind of stuff. But it's interesting. It's sort of all over the place. But I guess since J.J. Abrams can do this kind of stuff, I guess now that's kind of leaked over to the Doctor Who camp, right? Where you could have two Spocks in the same scene,
Yeah, but again, also not inconsequential. I mean, obviously Jodie Whittaker was the first woman to play the Doctor, and now within a year we've gotten a second female Doctor and a black woman at that.
Right.
So not without impact. This is an interesting twist, and so of course obviously Whovians have kind of went bananas on the blogosphere on Monday, and we're talking about is this a trick? Is it a ruse or whatever else? And the show creators said, no, to be clear, this is the Doctor. This is not some weird whatever. It'll play out how it plays out, but this is the Doctor.
Right.
So they're crystal clear on that. They also confirmed, I noticed a couple of days ago, that in spite of a very funny little appearance by John Barrowman as Captain Jack, he's not coming back this season, which I think is very unusual. That he basically pops in, accidentally kidnaps the entire entourage, and then basically lays down this warning about beware the lone Cyberman, and then disappears, and apparently will not be back this year. So interesting. Yeah.
So by the way, interesting. Just reading some in Wikipedia. There are a bunch of Whovians out there who are shaking their fists at this show right now, Jonathan, because there's a character named the Runaway Bride who is played by Catherine Tate, who played Donna Noble, who was David Tennant's companion for a bit, maybe a season, who became a Doctor for an episode. So she was actually the first female Doctor, and it could be argued that what's her name, Alex Kingston's character.
Yeah, she was also imbued with power at one point. I think it's splitting hairs. I think the truth is that Jodie Whittaker is going to be the Doctor for 3 full series versus an episode here and an episode there. Again, sure, if we were talking about pedantic earlier. If you want to be pedantic, of course, that you can make those references. But it is certainly much more of note that what we're really talking about is the star of the show. Donna Noble was always a companion. So even if she had Doctor abilities, she was just a companion. Whereas, Jodie Whittaker is the star of this show for at least 3 years. That's the difference. So take that.
I was making an interesting note about Donna is that her fiance Lance was also the locksmith for a company owned by Torchwood.
Oh,
yeah. Well, there's obviously a lot of Doctor Who we got to go back and catch up on.
Yeah, it's one of those things too where I really did not watch a lot of Doctor Who prior to the 2005 revival, but I have seen every single episode since, and I feel like I have they're on series 13 now, or 12, I guess. I feel like I've amassed some knowledge of the Doctor Who stuff, but there was 30 years before that are just completely not in my wheelhouse at all. And there are certainly way more knowledgeable Whovians out there on the internet who have deep thoughts and opinions on this stuff that will shout me into the ground if necessary. So
yeah, I'm sure I missed a lot of the David Tennant years and I think I watched most of Matt Smith, but I know there were because it was awkward back in the day because it was it was on, I don't know if it was on Space TV or PBS or whatever, but it was hard to catch unless you were like sitting in front of your television back in the day before we had PVRs and stuff, right?
Yeah, well, and you kind of talked me in because I wasn't really on board with it because I had always sort of regarded Doctor Who as sort of substandard sci-fi, probably justified. Come at me, internet. But you had sort of said, I really enjoy the sort of Eccleston should actually give it a try, and I think it was when I first got Netflix. I think somewhere in there, Doctor Who was on Netflix. And so I powered through the first, 5 years or whatever it was at that point, and really got on board because that put me through the Eccleston, through the Tennant, and into the beginning, I think, of Matt Smith. And so I really got a good sort of run at it all at once over the course of a summer or whatever I watched it. And that really started made me sort of get involved in it and sort of follow along from there.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was thinking about a comment that you made last week about, normally, like, there's only been, I guess with Rory and Amy Pond, there were 2 companions. But back in the day, they used to occasionally have 2 or 3 companions running around with the various doctors. It wasn't always just one companion, right? So
yeah, and again, I don't think the ensemble is a bad thing. Like, the dynamics between those characters are occasionally some of the best parts of the show. But as I mentioned last week, I think, for me, I'm not 100% sold on the overall dynamic there. And again, I think they speak to it on the show where they sort of say the Doctor's kind of keeping them at arm's reach a little bit. And it just doesn't feel as it's the actors' chemistry too, and the way that it was written and everything else. But I felt like the chemistry between some of the Doctors and their companions in previous shows was very, very strong, especially because some of them were just a one-on-one. So they have a lot of time to connect. When you have those 4, 3
there was
1,
sexual
4
tension too, as well.
There was, absolutely, there was.
Yeah,
but also it's the intimacy, right? Because there was it's one Doctor and one companion. They have a lot more time to act off each other and feed off each other, and
right. Yeah.
When you have these 3-to-1 ratios, you just don't get how much time can you say the Doctors had specifically with one of those 3 at a time? They are sort of getting their turns, but it's looser, right? It's less connected. I can't think of a scene off the top of my head that where Ryan and the new Doctor have had a real moment. It's just a different dynamic.
Yeah. The two kind of pair up the 2 younger ones, right?
Yeah, I am loving the Yorkshire accents, though. Oh my god, I cannot get enough. Every time they all start talking, I just think it's one of the best accents in the world. It's every time Jodie Whittaker opens her mouth, and the rest of them, Jazz, and oh my god, they kill me. Jaime, what as the newbie Whovian, what are your impressions of this for you?
I thought this was a fun episode. I've had maybe sort of a rough introduction to Doctor Who, so I know some of the lore, and there's still a lot of questions in my mind. It actually really feels like if I was a fan who was jumping into Star Trek Picard without really knowing all that much about TNG, right? We're like, I kind of get some things. I kind of have absorbed some of the cultural stuff, so I'm not completely lost. I thought this episode was fun. The twist of the 2 Doctors who don't know each other, neither one remembers them, is kind of interesting. I was kind of thinking of a Kelvin timeline or mirror universe sort of thing that I thought, maybe there's a callback to something that's happened in Doctor Who's history. Yeah,
that was where my mind went. Of course, you start to puzzle it out in your mind. Well, what could it be? What could it be? If they don't remember each other, why wouldn't they remember each other? And immediately my mind went to alternate dimension or some sort of sci-fi trope like that. It is a good little riddle though for the season. As I say, the first couple episodes sort of a little bit of drama with the return of the Doctor, and then was not blown away by the most recent episode. I guess last week with the Nikola Tesla. It was fine, but it wasn't anything to knock your socks off. And the one before that, the one with the the world's gonna end if we don't all get out of that was a little preachy for my taste. It was a little heavy-handed on the
hotel one. Yeah,
the not so subtle. If you don't take care of the planet, this is what you're all gonna look like. It was a little much, but yeah, again, it came back strong with this one, so it'll be interesting to see where they go from here.
Sure, cool. Alrighty, should we move into the watch list? So mine are pretty simple. Altered Carbon's coming out season 2. I enjoyed the first kick at Altered Carbon, so I'm kind of looking forward to. I like the old Hinneman or whatever his name is. I like his work. So we'll see where this one goes.
When does that start?
I can't remember. Didn't they not wrap that one up with a bow at the end of that episode? At the end of that first season?
Yeah, it could have died from there if they wanted it to.
Never need to come back. Yeah, so we'll have to see. In terms of anticipation, we'll have to see what that is. The other thing too is since I didn't live and die by the next generation of Star Trek, I went back and watched A Measure of Anne, which we talked about last week and this week a bit, to find out a little bit more about Bruce Maddox, because I'm kind of my gut tells me he's going to be the trope of the guy who was, had the wonderful idea and was turned down, and the Federation turned against him, and now he's going to go off into his evil lair and stew for a few years and come back, and be the nasty piece of work that sort of, almost like a master in a sense, a grouchy, grumbly, seeking revenge kind of guy, like the character in The Incredibles, the main arch enemy guy there, sort of, although this twist with the Romulans today kind of puts it all in the political, you got the corporate side with the Federation on one side doing what's good for the shareholders. You've got the Romulans who are like trying, the Tony Sopranos of the world. They're trying to undermine, whatever. They're trying to run within the system, control the universe, as it were. And then you're going to have this character that's going to come out of the woodwork at the last minute, and be the big bad guy. So it was interesting to watch the show, go back and see the logic behind, how Picard and Riker has to defend, Riker has to prosecute, and Picard has to defend, and how quickly Maddox kind of backs off at the end there too, which is kind of surprising, considering that they're now sort of almost building a show around him. Yeah,
and there was that later episode too where Data is recording the events of his day as a message to Maddox too. So there is that sort of There's one more episode where Maddox is referenced where he basically says, like, you've been asking me for more information on sort of how I'm living my life as a synthetic person, and so he narrates the episode as he goes through his day to Commander Maddox, which is interesting.
Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, again, you mentioned that in the show last week, and I sort of caught it, but I had since we've got all of Star Trek on the Netflix and the Hulu and whatever, so we can go back and watch these. So, and I really enjoyed watching it without commercials. I found that really good.
Yeah.
Because it's on Space TV. Like, I watch the different episodes every now and then, but I have to remind myself that I don't have to watch commercials to watch this stuff. So the last one is that we haven't really talked about this very much, but it just kind of showed up on HBO. I noticed it last week and didn't mention it, but again, I just saw another commercial for it. I was looking at the IMDb app, and a quick commercial for Avenue 5, which is sort of, I guess, HBO's version of the Orville, if you will. It's kind of looks a little bit like the spaceship in WALL-E.
Yes, that's very much what I did watch the first episode of this.
Oh, did you watch it?
Yeah, I did. And it is much more like that. The idea is that basically it's a cruise ship that goes through the solar system, and very quickly in the first episode, it gets knocked off course, and it's supposed to be away for a few weeks or 6 weeks or something like that, and it gets knocked off course, and the expectation is because they've been knocked off course, it's going to take them years to get home.
So it's like Gilligan's Island meets Lost in Space
meets Voyager, right? Like it's so. But again, the idea is that they're staying in the solar system, but they're taking a much more wide elliptical path around the sun and back. So they were supposed to, I guess, slingshot around a planet and get the gravity well to pull it in, and then zip them back towards Earth. But now they're knocked off course, and it's supposed to take them 3 years to get home. I was interested because, again, I like a lot of the people in the cast. There's a couple of people who were on Silicon Valley who were on it. Hugh Laurie is the star, and Josh Gad, who is Olaf from Frozen. He's he was with the lead actor from Book of Mormon. I was sort of intrigued by it, but I will say, for what it's worth, if you want to check it out, go ahead. I don't know that I will continue watching it. It was not funny enough to be funny.
Yeah, I think I might just
maybe wait till the entire run is done, and then you can sit down and sort of power through like the first 3 in a row and sort of see. I watched the first one. It's only it's a half-hour show. It's a pretty breezy watch, but it certainly was not enough for me to think I really care about it. Hugh Laurie is always a charming and delightful person, but I really was not sucked in by it at all. I was honestly hoping it would either be funnier, just because I thought, like, same thing. I thought, like, well, it's a little Orville-y. Maybe it'll be like a funny sort of space romp kind of thing. And Laurie, again, is a brilliant comedic actor. He hasn't done that as much the last few years. But I thought, maybe they'll let Hugh Laurie loose. It's HBO. Like, who knows? And maybe they still will. But it was a little bit more
safe.
Yeah. It just didn't click. There was not a lot of chemistry, and it just didn't do anything for me off the hop. So.
Well, there's been a lot of shows like that lately. I think now that we've got so much TV to choose from, that you can be a little selective about whether or not you continue with the show. I mean, like, I can't tell. I mean, I don't watch The Walking Dead anymore because it's just become the same thing over and over again. You know, oh, it's a different, you know,
murder porn.
This one's takes place on Tuesday.
Yeah.
You know, and the same thing with this. Like, and to be honest with you, if I never had to watch another episode of The Orville again, I wouldn't mind.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
So yeah, and I get this sort of impression that this was kind of the sort of thing. So it sort of seems like an also ran kind of show, but
yeah, I would say that if you're looking for something to keep you busy, I would say you're definitely better off going with Watchmen or Lost in Space or
right,
you know, Clone Wars is coming back, or Catch Up on Rebels, or you know, like there's so much good TV. You're right. Like, we're in a really beautiful era where, especially if you have a few bucks, or say, for example, your family members have subscriptions to services that you share. There's just so much material to watch that you don't have to watch bad TV. You just don't. Like, yeah, it'll sort itself out.
All right. So what do you got there, Jonathan?
I got this one. Now, I saw part of this week, and it is genius. So there is this YouTube video online. It's called Toy Story 3 IRL, and it was a project by two teenage boys who decided to do a shot-for-shot remake of Toy Story 3 using the toys and actual actors and real sets. It is, and so they actually use the actual voices from the movie. Right. So when you hear Tom Hanks and Tim Allen and everybody else playing all the parts, but they did a shot-for-shot remake of this using all the toys, including, you know, I don't know if you guys remember Toy Story 3. The beginning of the movie starts with them living a very dynamic version of one of the adventures that Andy has them do at the beginning of the original Toy Story, or Toy Story 2, I guess. It's amazing. It's really, really well done. Apparently, it took them like years and years to do.
Yeah, 3 years. Yeah, they were on CBC the other day. Yeah.
And it's just great. It's really, really fun. I highly recommend. Even if you just watch a few different scenes. Obviously, it's shot for shot, beginning to end. It's the whole damn movie. But if you take
before Disney takes it down, right? Yeah.
Well, I think, you know, a lot of people are sort of that sentiment that, like, you know, maybe they will, maybe they won't, maybe they'll be good sports about it, because it is very much done with love. Like, this is not taking the piss out of anything. This is very much by people who love this stuff and decided to really, you know, have some having a good time with this. And it's great. It's really fun. Go through it. Again, just skip around a few scenes, anything you remember from the movie. It's really, really fun. I highly recommend checking this out. Very, very cool. Other thing I will just quickly tack on to our watch list. In the 1 week that we've been off since last episode, I did power through all of HBO's Watchmen. I will also put that one very high on the recommendation list. It came highly recommended. It is everything that's advertised. I was very much a little leery going in because having had an opportunity to speak with Alan Moore in the past, and to being such a big fan of that book, and knowing that he didn't really want people to mess around with that world, I was a little bit leery. But Damon Lindelof, of course, is the showrunner on this and the writer, and he's obviously behind Lost. It's great. It's really, really good. It takes, if you've seen the film or you've read the book, it basically imagines if those events happened in the 1980s, what would the world like be in 2019? You know, all that time after the events of that movie. What would the world be like? What would the politics be like? What would the superhero situation be like? And it's brilliant. The performances are wonderful. Regina King is absolutely captivating as the star. You know, some really, really excellent performances. Louis Gossett Jr. has a really great role. He's 83 years old, and he is just as captivating now as he was when he won Oscars 30 years ago. It's really good. I was not thinking I would enjoy it as much as I did, but yeah, it is really good TV. And now we talked about last week how there sounds like there isn't going to be a season 2, and I'm a little heartbroken because it's really good.
Okay, cool. Which brings us back to Measure of Man, if I may.
Yeah, watch Tim's pick first, and then watch this analysis of it by Legal Eagle, the channel on YouTube, where a real lawyer reacts to the lawyering and courtroom scene stuff and how that goes.
It's TLDR, just they're completely wrong and Data's not a human or whatever?
I forget what the rating was. I think it was a passing grade. I've watched his channel before. There's other shows that do way better, and there are other shows that do way worse. So this one's sort of middle of the road with regard to, you know, would this work from a quote unquote real world legal aspect. Granted, he's talking about it from like an American lawyer, and I forget which states he has a legal right to represent himself as a lawyer. That's not exactly the same as being in the 24th century and in a interstellar sort of society. But it's still fun to take a look at.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, I found it interesting that in the Measure of a Man that, they could just, in a sort of corporate, heavy-handed Starfleet kind of way, I'm transferring you from one ship to another, and there's nothing you can do about it. You can't quit, you can't go anywhere. It's kind of like those are your orders, and that's kind of the setup for, Data being deconstructed is that, he's been transferred, and Picard can't do anything about it, and, the JAG officer, representative, she says that, she can't do anything about it, which is different than how you would think things would go in a society that far advanced, right? You'd think that there would be some recourse, but yeah, interesting to see what this lawyer has to say about it. Alrighty, so I guess that's it for another week. So hey, Jaime, if people want to get in touch with you, where would they find you?
I'm on Twitter as @DevWithTheHair.
Alrighty, and Jonathan, people want to get in touch with you?
I'm on Twitter and Instagram as @JPKNews.
Alrighty then. And my name is Timitra. I am TIMMITRA on the Twitter machine, and that's where you'll find me. So until next time, we'll see you in the future. Bye.
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 You've been listening to the Spotcast podcast. This is Jean-Luc Picard. Shut up, Wesley. Sorry, say again. Just the tag. Gotcha. If you want to find out more about the podcast or see the episode show notes, visit the Spotcast website at spotcast.com. You can get in touch with us on the website or follow us on Twitter @Spotcast. If you have feedback or questions, send us a tweet with the hashtag AskSpotcast. If you like the show, please consider recommending us to a friend, writing a review on iTunes, or pledging any amount at patreon.com/Spotcast. You can find details on how to help us on our website, spotcast.com/sponsor us. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you in the future.
Plug in for keep your eyes peeled, folks, because the Spockies are coming.
Yes, the Spockies are coming. Our second annual,
third
Spocky
annual,
Awards.
Third.
Did we do?
We did. We did
3 times.
This will be our third annual Spocky Awards.
Wow.
Yeah.
Who won the first 2 years? I can't remember.
You know what? I don't have it here in front of me. I do have it. I do have a file folder with it, but I don't have it at my fingertips.
Really?
Yep. We can do a little recap for what it's worth.
The Spockies. Well, how about that? We'll have to start a Spockies blog or something.
Yeah, Facebook page. We'll get a Facebook page going.
Well, no, we can do it on our website. We have a
there you go.
We have a website. We have spotcast.com, which you should link to.
Indeed.
For your viewing pleasure and listening pleasure.
Yep. Yes, lots of good stuff to choose from this year. We're going to dive back into Best Picture, Best TV Show. We're going to look at Best New Show, of course, Best Actor and Best Actress. And one of my favorite categories is always Most Anticipated Movie of 2020. I believe the most anticipated movie of 2019 was Star Wars Rise of Skywalker, and not in fact Avengers Endgame. So maybe our voting audience missed that boat a little bit, but yeah, lots.
Did we have people besides us vote? I can't remember.
Oh yeah.
Oh, we did, eh?
Yeah.
Did we put a Google poll or something like that?
I think we did. I think we did it up on Facebook and a few different places. And got some responses. Yeah. We'll throw it up on our socials, and we'll badger all of our friends and acquaintances to get on board. And curious to see.
Did anybody reply to my tweet that I sent out the other day?
Well, I did, for what it's worth.
Did you?
I did.
I didn't see you make a comment there.
Me? I don't think I commented. I think I just
retweeted it.
Retweeted it.
Wait, where is it?
Jaime, can we talk about the Seattle Kraken for a second here? It's like they're channeling me.
Yeah, it is close enough. The ruling on the field is that this is close enough, given that Krakens do tend to be featured in fiction.
And how do you feel about Kraken as a team name for?
I actually prefer what are the other ones that I had seen, like Yeti as an option at some point. I don't know if it made it to the down selected list. Kraken works fine for me. I think it's got some good things you can do with that. You can go in like a Cthulhu theme. You can have octopi and squids and other things that can be, sold at the arena. And the one that came to my attention as people were discussing this in Seattle channels that I hadn't even considered is that you could call the fans crackheads. And I'm like, yeah, that kind of seems, I mean, just imagine like, so Green Bay Packers fans in the NFL wear these big, obnoxious wedge shaped cheese heads, right? These foam ones. And if you just did that, but with like, tendrils coming off the top of it, like that'd be amazing. Mm-hmm. So I hadn't really voted for it. I kind of preferred Yeti myself, sort of thematically in the Pacific Northwest, but I could be convinced if that ends up being the real name. The
Seattle Times did a poll last year. I just looked this up, and they said, hey, what do you think the nickname for the NHL team should be? Sockeyes was the winner, defeating Totems. Kraken was 5th behind Metropolitans and Steelheads. So those are the 5 finalists according to the Seattle Times poll. Sockeyes, salmon, Steelhead are salmon. Fish. You don't have to tell me, man. The Mississauga junior team is the Mississauga Steelheads, the big angry fish on the front of their jersey.
Nice.
And Totems, Kraken, and Metropolitans. Of course, Metropolitans is the classic name. That was the name of the former NHL team there 100 years ago that actually won the Stanley Cup.
Seattle Metropolitans?
Metropolitans.
Wow.
Back when it was a Challenge Cup. Way back when. The team has said for the record that there has been no decision made. They are not willing to commit to the fact that the Kraken is the name, but it has been making the rounds that, I think for the visuals, like think of the jersey possibilities. That's fantastic. Like way better than an angry fish.
Yeah, and I do think we could have some fun with the mascot, right?
Yeah.
Kinda like gritty.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I'm down. That'll be my favorite West Coast team as soon as they start.
Yeah, except when Toronto's playing them, right?
Absolutely. Never root against the Leafs.
I heard. He bleeds blue if you cut him.
Yep, in the blood. Can't live here and not have it in the blood.
What color will the Seattle Kraken be?
Good question. I don't know if they've shown any color options, but the vast majority of teams in the Seattle area tend to choose some variant on green and some variant on blue. Mm-hmm. I think the XFL that is starting up soon, the Seattle Dragons, are one of the few teams that don't follow this. I think it's blue and orange, I want to say, are their primary colors.
Yeah, 3 of our Toronto teams are blue, and one of them is it was purple, but now it's tends to be red and white. The Raptors, of course, they can do whatever the heck they want because they won the championship. So
right, isn't the what do you call the soccer team, the TFA?
Oh, TFC, you're right. TFC's red. Yeah, you'll forgive me for they actually are probably, I guess, in a more contemporary league than the football team, which plays in the Canadian League. The Argonauts are blue, but of course we also have the Maple Leafs, the Blue Jays, and even the Marlies are a pretty popular franchise here in town. That's the American League team, and they're also blue. So yeah, we sort of got, I guess, 4 blues in that. I don't know what color we have a first division rugby side now too. We have the Wolfpack. I think they're black and white. Yep.
Yippee-ki-yay.
Yep. All right.
Yeah, I think it's time to call it a cast.
Yep.
Alrighty. Till next time. Did you guys ever get a chance to see the Ready Room stuff? They show it on All Access.
I watched it. You sent a link, and I used a VPN tool to watch it.
I cannot believe that stupid thing was segregated by region.
I'm surprised. It's funny because they did go to the point of having this early release on Crave and everything else. I don't know why they wouldn't just put it on there. Like, it seems like if you're trying to get eyes on your platform, why wouldn't you? But I guess it never occurred to them to do that.
Yeah, what really bugs me is Will Wheaton's seen a bunch of episodes already.
Yeah.
Supposedly a fair number of people
Wesley.
reviewed 3. Yeah, at least the first 3, I think, is what Wesley, a lot of the media got. So we'll see.
Yeah.
Right. All right. Well, I'll talk to you later.
Yep. See you next week, guys.
Bye.
Bye.